Welcome to European Railway, the video magazine for the continental enthusiast. In this issue we visit Switzerland and the BLS main line at Kandersteg. We study motive power on the route from Paris to Rouen. A look at activity around the main marshalling yard at Rostock. A visit is made north of the Polish city of Katowice. Some diesel action during 2006 from one of the LGV Est construction sites in France. Spanish diesels at work on the steelworks line around Gijón. And mountain splendour as we journey to Austria. The opening of the brand new Lochberg base tunnel on 15th of June last to a limited amount of freight trains marks to some extent the end of the intense rail traffic that uses the classic BLS route over the summit between Candlestick and Goppenstein. The new tunnel is expected to fully open in December, when intercity and most freight services will use this route. As for the old route, well, all is not lost, as up to 40 freight trains and a number of passenger services are expected to continue to be routed this way. In our first section depicting life before the tunnel, we study rail activity through Kandersteg station on Wednesday 28th of March 2007. One train service which is set to continue is the regular car shuttle trains which operate through the Lochberg tunnel to and from Goppenstein. These trains are still operated by BLS RE44 locos, finished in the once common brown livery. One of the other well-recognised BLS loco classes are the 465s, which were introduced in the mid-1990s. Here number 16 and number 6 head a southbound train of lorries. The BLS have acquired many new locomotives in recent years to cater for increases in freight traffic. Amongst those are the Class 485, their own version of the popular German Class 185. Here number 12 and number 5 head north with a train of empty car carriers. Every so often, train sets used for the car-carrying shuttles are swapped for maintenance. Here, number 165 leaves the sheds on the western side of the station and makes its way to the loading area to the south. An unusual sight during our visit was this Siemens-operated Class 642 diesel test train, conducting work between here and Frutigen. You can get some impressive loco formations on this steeply graded route, such as here where we see 485005 leading 485012, 185577 and 485014. The station here serves the local town, which during the winter months is a thriving ski resort. The mild winter weather of 2007 meant that snow levels were very much reduced, compared to what would normally be expected. Undertaking most of the shunting was BLS Class EEA-33 shunter number 402, built in 1991. This locomotive is unique to the BLS fleet by having auxiliary batteries fitted, which enables it to operate in non-electrified sidings. The car shuttle trains operate every 30 minutes in the winter, increasing to a 20-minute schedule during the peak summer months. The journey takes around 15 minutes and provides the only route for traffic using the main road between Spiez and Brieg over the Lochberg mountain range. During our stay, there were around 4 freight services each hour. This is 465, 010 and 8. A number of freight services now use the new tunnel, and these will steadily increase in the run-up to its full opening on December the 8th. Passenger stock used on the Basel to Milano workings is now appearing in the new Cisalpino livery. Here 11302 arrives with a 12 o'clock from Basel. Finally, ex-regional Werke Mittellandbahn Class 436s number 112 and 113, now being used by Swiss operator Crossrail, are seeing with 185, 578 and 566. We continue our series with a look at some of the lines radiating out of Paris. This time we begin a 2-part feature on the route up to Rouen. We begin at Port Villers station north of Mantes, as 1958 vintage 16002 heads the 1512 from Paris to Le Havre on 17th of June 2005. Freight traffic on this line has dropped considerably compared to just a few years ago. Here 66238 hurries south with a freight for the Paris region. The final Class 25500 electrics have now been withdrawn from freight work, with just a couple now employed on passenger duties being loaned out to Swiss railways for work around Geneva. The class were recently employed on passenger duties around Nevers, but we understand this too has just finished. However, the 25600 numbered locos still remain active on passenger work, mainly around Lyon. Orders for new TER-2N-NG Class Z76500 5-car double-deck EMUs have just been announced and will be used on Paris-Rouen stopping services, replacing trains such as this from 2008. At Uzelle station, south of Rouen, on Friday 7th July 2006, 16103 heads for Paris with a train of double-deck stock. X4750 two-car diesel units are also fast disappearing from these routes, with most of their duties being undertaken by new modern units, or 3-car class X4900 units based at Sotoville. 16047 passes over the River Seine just south of the station. Our last location in this feature is just to the south of Sotoville Yard, as number 17026 propels this stopping service north towards Rouen. In the background, a large factory with extensive rail connections lies closed and abandoned, a scene typical throughout this part of France. Meanwhile, a Class Z76500 unit overtakes the train whilst on a working from Caen. Most freight traffic in this region is now worked by Class 2700 electrics, such as seen here behind 27140. Other freight can be worked by BB 22200 or BB 26000s. Finally, 16050 gets into its stride whilst heading the 1706 from Le Havre to Paris. In part 2 of this feature, we will look at activity in and around the main yard at Sotoville. The single-track line from Caserta to Benevento in Italy travels under the magnificent Ponti della Valle Aqueduct. Here, an unidentified Class 656 heads east on 24th of April 2007. The port of Rostock is one of the largest in the Baltic Sea region. Serving the docks from the rail point of view is the local marshalling yard, which boasts over 180 kilometres of track. We take a look at activity in September 2006. The local S-Bahn serves the port from the town's main station, running at hourly intervals. The service is entrusted to a Class 628 diesel unit which operates the service throughout the day. Here number 639 enters the small halt at Rostock Toltenwinkel. There are few locations where you can view the traffic, the best being the two S-Bahn stations that border the western edge of the yard. Here you can view locomotives such as this running to and from the main depot or from the main reception yard. Other trains leaving direct from the docks also use these tracks to make their way to the departure sidings. Inward bound traffic uses the tracks on the far side of the complex. The yard is also home to many stored Class 155 electrics, with a scattering of Class 141 and 232 making up the numbers. As already mentioned, one of the other S-Bahn stations is right adjacent to the main departure yards. Here 628639 arrives with a service for Rostock docks. There are a number of different classes of shunting or trip locomotives to be seen working around the area. This is 291010. The amount of movements would best be described as steady, with the afternoon and early evening being a good time to see most traffic. This locomotive has had quite a history since being built in the year 2000, having spent time with operators MRCE, the Swiss national operator SBB, and then private operator Mittelturgaubahn, before returning to Germany with new private operator Press. It is seen here in their blue livery, with running number 145023. Action in the main sorting sidings is pretty well constant, with a steady stream of wagons being pushed over the hump facility. As another rake of wagons is removed for sorting, 290527 makes its way back to the main docks complex. Re-engined Class 232 number 233450 runs from the depot and out towards the departure sidings. DB still run a handful of XDR Class 298 diesels, which have been rebuilt as heavy-duty shunters. Here 298309, one of 6 allocated to Rostock, arrives with a local trip working. An XDR Class 201 in the shape of 710966 arrives with an engineer's train. This locomotive is thought to be owned by the company Deutsche Gleis- und Tiefbau, a track maintenance company and subsidiary of DB. Finally, 233450 starts up and sets back on its trainload of fertiliser hoppers, as we bid farewell to this interesting freight complex in the Baltic coast port of Rostock. In this section, we pay a brief visit to Warsaw before moving to the Katowice area in search of some busy freight activity. Tarnowskie Góry is situated to the northwest of the city on a busy north-south freight artery and sees near constant activity. As promised though, we begin near Warsaw on 25th of June 2006 as Polish State Railways electric loco number ET22779 heads this northbound train of grain. These locomotives are one of the most numerous types to be seen operating in this country. Following on behind is EU07 number 109 as it heads towards the capital. This is one of over 500 built throughout the 1960s for passenger work. We turn our attention now to the Katowice area and to the town of Tarnowskie Góry as another ET22 heads this mixed freight. Here we see a Class ET22 and a pair of SM31 diesels on a light engine move as they head south. The town sees a limited passenger service in the form of EN57 EMUs, working mainly Katowice to Lötchberg services. Chemtrans Logistic, or CTL for short, was one of the first private operators to become established in Poland. Here CTL Class ET21071 pilots Class 120007, a Class M62 diesel, originally from the Czech Republic, with running number 781324. the near 1,200 that were built for PKP between 1969 and 1989, around 950 ET22s remain in traffic. Double loco number ET41107 is an example of another class widely seen. One of the 200 built for the State Railways, they are very much in evidence on all manner of freight turns. In complete contrast, ET22668 makes light work of this small load. Finally, double loco class ET40 number 26 passes the camera. We will pay another visit to this area in a future edition of European Railway to witness the fascinating variety of trains and locomotive types to be seen in this vast industrial area of southern Poland. On 10th June 2007, the new high-speed TGV route opened to the east of Paris, the first stage in a line which will stretch out to Strasbourg to the east. Auxerre, just east of Paris, was the location of one of the major engineering and construction depots involved in building of the line. We paid an early morning visit on Friday 7th July 2006, when activity was in full swing. Our first scene shows a Sulzer engine class CC65000, number 65505, leaving the base at just after 5 AM in the morning. Looking more like a steam special, 56081 and 060 lead 56032 and 031. SNCF withdrew all but a handful of their Class A1A A1A 68000 heavy freight diesels prior to this project starting. A few, however, were returned to traffic to haul stone trains to and from the other construction base at St Hilaire. With a period of poor reliability from the Class 56s and 58s, the 68000s were also drafted in to take over some of the duties on the LGV itself. Here 512 and 504 lead 56065 and 094. Locomotives were also hired in from private operator CFTA, who had spare capacity in their fleet of BB 4800 diesels. Here 4803 and 4810 worked this train up the steep gradient out of the base. Finally, 68540 and 538 lead out 56090 and 051 at just after 6 am. Interestingly, SNCF still seems to be using the remaining handful of 68000 and 68500 on infrastructure workings based around their home depot at Chalindray. In our 2003 special edition of European Railway, we looked at the railways associated with the steel manufacturing plants now owned by Arcelor around Gijón. In early July 2007, we paid a brief visit back to the area to see some of the changes on the motive power front. A new replacement locomotive programme has taken place, with the purchase of a number of Vossloh Class G1700 diesels to operate the trains of torpedo wagons used to transport molten iron from the works at Varinia. These new locomotives are a direct replacement for the 1200 horsepower Babcock and Wilson diesels dating from the late 1960s and early 1970s, which have been used until quite recently. Fortunately for the enthusiast, some of these older locomotives are still in use, principally on coal trains to and from the Staithes at Abonio. Trains operate around the clock 365 days per year, with wagons making several journeys each day. Trains of molten iron typically weigh in at over 900 tons, with at least 25 such movements required between the two production plants every 24 hours. The main line linking the famous ski resort of Kitzbühel to Zell am See skirts the Kitzbühler mountain range and is part of the through route from Vogel to Salzburg and other points east. We look at activity around the small town of Hochfilzen before continuing on to Saalfelden. A number of local services from Vogel terminate or begin at Hochfilzen, calling at most stations en route. Here the 1426 departure leaves with electric locomotive 1144-238 providing power at the rear. The town has a population of around 1,200 people, but this is swelled many times over during the winter months, as it is a popular cross-country ski resort. In March 1995, it hosted the Biathlon World Championships, as it did in 1978 and 1998. 1044-099 has arrived with the 1327 from Vogel and is seen running round its stock. The 1320 Innsbruck to Vienna service arrives with 1116-178 sandwiched in the middle. Operating as part of OBB's Nostalgia fleet, preserved Class 1020 number 47 heads empty coaching stock towards Saalfelden on 11th of July 2006. We now move to Saalfelden, where 1044-039 arrives with the 1427 service from Vogel. Next to the main station is the unloading and stone transfer facilities of the 600mm gauge mineral railway of the Diaberswerk Saalfelden Company. A set of empties lurches its way back to the nearby quarry. (102047) has left its stock in the nearby sidings and retires back to the depot. Its helpover 1044112 returns west for its next turn of duty. Incidentally, the border with Germany lies just over the mountains in the far left. The 2,634 metre high Bernhorn mountain dominates the scene as 1116172 slows whilst working the 1535 from Innsbruck to Graz. Finally, we see 1044-105 arriving with a short freight from Hochfilzen. We hope once again that you have enjoyed this edition of European Railway.